This is the one and only trigger warning I will give for this video. Mostly because it's pertaining with issues of bullying, and because I deal with a lot of people who has dealt with narcissistic abuse, severe bullying, domestic abuse in the past. There are some things surrounding this author and the things that he said in response to this website and their editors that might be triggering and you just don't want to have to deal with and unpack today. If that's the case, I encourage you not to. But like I said, the only reason why I'm even covering this, because this isn't like a gossip channel or anything, is because it portrays abuse. Frankly, author abuse toward editors. To the point to where I was like, this ties in very well with my abuse survivor advocacy. And I've had a few writer friends who have talked about this, and they frankly found the entire situation very triggering. So we've had a lot of conversations, and it kind of led to one thing or other where like was a situation that we but found value into unpacking together, and I'm sort of just trying to unpack this a little bit for you. But to get right to it, this controversy centers around two groups. A website called Scifi And Scary.com, which is a science fiction and horror review site where authors, especially a lot of self-published authors, they submit their books to the site and they have it reviewed. The other part of this controversy includes a writer called Klein, which is a self-published author of 3 books, or 3.5 I can find so far. Hell's Shadow, The Amulet, a Christian thriller, King of the Nine Hells, and the Jerusalem Stone? Whatever. It's really hard to find him on Amazon because he's taken all his books off of Amazon. And the only thing that's up there right now is used books that users are trying to unload on their own marketplace on the Amazon website. We'll get to that part later. It came quite clear to the people at Sci-Fi and Scary that Mr. Klein was suffering from anxiety, which is very common for writers to have anxiety and other mental health issues. And the people at Sci-Fi and Scary had a lot of empathy for that because they too have anxiety issues. And they knew that landing the bad news upon Mr. Klein that he was going to receive a bad review from them without any warning, it just sprung upon him, could send him into a shame spiral. Because that's what people with anxiety do. So they knew they needed to warn him so he could prepare for it, so he wouldn't go into said shame spiral. So in that way, they were very thoughtful toward him. The reviewer who read his book, Hell's Shadow, his name is Cyan Plummer. She, as a reviewer, read through the whole book and came to the decision that it wasn't that good. And as per Sci-Fi and Scary's policy, they're very clear that they rarely give perfect reviews. It's very hard to get a 5-star from them. And even with that knowledge, he didn't do very well at all, apparently. But she had written up what she felt was a very kind review. And like I said, they wanted to warn him it was going to be a kind but truthful and constructive review of his work. They didn't want to blindside him, send him into a shame spiral. They really seemed like they were having empathy for someone who is suffering from anxiety, which, me personally, I appreciate that kind of care coming from professionals in our industry. The letter that they sent to Mr. Klein, starting off, read as such. Dean, sorry for not getting to you sooner. I knew Cyan had recently read it, but wasn't sure when exactly the review for your book was going to be scheduled for yet. The review will be going out soon. Because I understand what it's like to have anxiety, I am going to tell you in advance that it is a negative but constructive review. It is not a mean review, as we do try our best not to do those, but it is not the positive one you or any writer would hope for. Remember that reviews are subjective, and what she did not like, another reader may love. I encourage you to keep working on your craft. You've already published a book. That is loads more than many ever do. Reviews are also for readers, not authors, so you should not feel like you have to read the review either. Best. That was a pretty nice heads up. And again, she did not have to give him a heads up. No one from Sci-Fi and Scary owes an author a heads up. And this is where I'm going to say this was the first mistake made. Not the first mistake. I'm not saying this was a mistake made by any of the team at Sci-Fi and Scary or Lillian or Cyan. None of them did anything wrong. This is what I'd call a universal mistake. When you're dealing with a personality that you are assuming is a normal, well-adjusted adult, might have some anxiety issues, but is overall well-adjusted adult. You've mistaken it as a well-adjusted adult. I'm going to put this right out here that certain personality types will abuse what they perceive this to be. They perceive this to be a weakness. That you are open to communication, thus you are open to hearing me out as well. A normal, I think, well-adjusted human being would have read that letter and said, oh, okay, thanks for the heads up. That sucks that I got a bad review. They would have dealt with their own anxiety issues if they had it, and they would have prepared themselves. Because let me just say this frankly and straight. Having an underlying mental health issue is an explanation for why someone might act inappropriately or irrationally or abusively, but is not an excuse. Regardless of how they feel in the moment, regardless of what they might be triggering to do or not do, they are responsible for their actions. They never have to apologize for their feelings, but they are responsible for how they treat other people, and they are responsible for the hurt and abuse that they extend upon other people. Your mental health issue can be an explanation for why you act the way you do, but it is not an excuse. And I'm going to chunk up what we're going to read next from Mr. Klein as in the category of his anxiety is no excuse for his behavior. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am not claiming to be a psychiatrist. I am not diagnosing Mr. Klein. What I'm saying is that this behavior was unacceptable regardless of whatever the heck is going on with him. Again, I feel like them sending that original letter was opening them up, and they did nothing wrong. They did the empathetic thing, and I would have done the same thing if I thought I was dealing with someone with extreme anxiety. I would give them a heads up, not to blindside them. But what it did was it said, oh, they're willing to communicate about this. Meaning, it can kind of be viewed as a weakness. And this does come off like the type of personality, when they see what they view as a weakness, they strike, and they strike irrationally, and they strike violently. So continuing on, Mr. Dean Klein replies. And this is lengthy, and I apologize. I don't know if I'm going to read all of this, but I'm going to read what's pertinent and stop to elaborate where it is important. As it's negative, then, please discard the review. Discard the review. Like it's a plate of escargot at Ruth's Chris that doesn't meet your satisfaction. Again, this isn't a pay for review site. He's not paying for a service here. They already went to the trouble and invested the hours into reading this book for review of their site in service of the reader, not in service of the author. But continuing. I don't wish to read it. Someone would have to go out of their way to prepare a negative review for this book. As a skilled author and editor, I've gone through Hell's Shadow dozens of times, made numerous editorial and material enhancements, even additions, constantly making the story richer and better. It is as shiny as it can be. I know what the tale contains and, of course, the level of sophistication and imagination it took to get it done. I'm sure you can appreciate it takes considerable skill in devising a storyline in a genre as popular as horror that hasn't been presented previously. Let's stop right there for a second. He's sort of acting like he's special in that he's the only writer that has ever edited their book dozens of times. Like, he's the one with the discipline and the drive and the know-how, and no other author does this. This is a red flag. He's special. And you're not seeing him as special. Also, again, this is a story about a couple who moves into a haunted house that has a curse where the wife is tormented and the husband doesn't believe the wife, and it exudes into conflict. Again, he's stating like he has created this genre-bending idea. But whatever, not to diminish him. Continuing. Yet that's exactly what I did. I am delighted to say response to it has been tremendously positive. By the way, I sent a copy of Hell's Shadows to Steven Spielberg's agent last month. Now we wait. Okay, this is the first appeal to authority he has. You know, authority, someone that's more important than you, more important than Sci-Fi and Scary and their reviewers, editors. Someone who's smarter than them, letting you know he is connected and is basking in the light of citizens, of people who are important. More important than you. Got to keep that in mind as we go forward. I've been writing professionally for 40 years for very well-educated, highly compensated readers before turning my attention to the genre of fiction for the past 15. Again, you see what he said there. He's been writing for some very well-educated and highly compensated readers. What he means by highly compensated is rich people. He writes for people who are better educated and better paid than you. People who are of a higher class. He worded that way so he didn't have to say people who are of a higher class in society than you. But that's what he meant. People who are better educated and are rich. It's another appeal to authority that he associates with important people. People who aren't like you. No one ever regarded anything I wrote as negative. Just the opposite, in fact. So here he's a very special, very precious, delicate snowflake that is a golden boy that is used to everyone loving him. Right? That's kind of a red flag. He said he's been working for over 40 years in professional writing, and no one ever regarded anything I wrote as negative. That's not possible. That's not reality in the writing industry. That's not reality. There's no one who's just so amazing that they never receive negative feedback. The only way you don't receive negative feedback is if you never put yourself out there. I know he's a self-published author, and not to disparage self-published authors, but maybe he hasn't put himself out there ever, and this is the first real pushback he's gotten from anyone. And that's really sad. How do you go 40 years in any industry without receiving criticism? Continuing on. Here is the last sentence of a review for another book I wrote, a review that arrived last week. Okay, why are we talking about another book? This is a review for Hell's Shadow. Who cares about another book? It is not pertinent to this discussion. Whatever. The writing is bold and steady. It starts strong, stays strong, and ends strong. Mr. Klein showcases a great imagination and creative genius, crafting a story with powerful plot points, conflict, and an unmistakable message. Okay. Cool. That's the level at which I write, Lillian. No other. At this point in my life, given my creativity and ability to put to paper what I conceive, I am an expert in report writing, story identity. Oh God, I gotta stop here. This is more masturbatory language, essentially. I have probably produced more pages of text than most best-selling authors. Writing is my hobby. It isn't my hobby, it's my craft. Yeah, but every writer who works in this industry, writing isn't their hobby. It's not even necessarily their craft, it's their job. Like, this is an industry. He is under this delusion that he's really special. And other authors aren't. That's a problem. That Cyan could write a negative review for Hell Shadow, a novel that doesn't borrow from anything. Again, there's no such thing as a novel that doesn't borrow from anything. Unless he really thinks he invented the haunted house, couple moves into cursed haunted house, girl goes crazy trope. I don't know. Maybe he's the reincarnation of Mary Shelley for all I know. Mystery, unfathomable creatures, secrets, and speculative danger of all kinds is quite frankly just mind-boggling. Why is it mind-boggling that someone might not think you're awesome and perfect? Have you been so sheltered your entire life, 40 years, have you been so sheltered that you've never received any criticism? Everyone's just always told you how great you are? I don't view this as possible. And this is where I'm actually going to say, I think he's lying. This isn't anxiety. Anxiety, when people have anxiety, they tend to shame spiral. In the midst of a shame spiral, it tends to be very directed inward. This isn't a shame spiral that you normally see in anxiety. This is a narcissistic tantrum. This is not unsimilar to a child tearing a house up because it didn't get exactly what it wanted, and it's going to cause hell, and it's going to scream, and it's going to bash, it's going to gnash its teeth until you give him exactly what he wanted. And he's not going to let up until you see how great he is, and you frankly need to surrender. I think he wants an apology and a surrender at this point to his greatness. This isn't dissimilar to a sunburn, what he's exposing here. It's like if you had a sunburn and someone came over, lifted your shirt up and smacked it. That is sort of what he is, because that's sort of what a narcissistic tantrum is. It is when someone's skin is very thin that they need a large cover, a large facade of this fake ego. It has a very big head of, I'm so great, I'm an important man, I'm related to important men, I only hang out with other important men. That's a facade. And they cover themselves with it to hide the fact that they're very thin-skinned and they're very bare and ugly underneath that. So it's not too dissimilar to taking off someone's shirt and exposing a sunburn, smacking it. And this is his normal reaction to having that sunburn smacked. Basically, his underdeveloped sense of courage, because people who aren't normally vulnerable don't tend to be able to be very courageous. His underdeveloped sense of humility. He hasn't developed resilience. And because he has not developed resilience, he has to compensate with all this bluster, it's all this hot air of, I'm very important, I only hang out with other important people. Can't you see how important and wonderful I am? And that is really what we're seeing here. Let's continue. I minored in English in university with a 4.0 GPA. Many of my compositions in high school and university won writing contests. So did mine. In an English master's class, I received the only A in a room full of English and liberal arts majors, and I was a chemistry major. Please think about that. Yeah. Sci-Fi and Scary. Think about that. One of my compositions during my college years was sent on to the Dean of Liberal Arts for its quality with no other student was according Accorded such an honor. This is kind of weird how he even structured this letter, but whatever. Yeah, he thinks that this is really special. I don't know if he's lying about this or not. I will take it in good faith that something really did happen, but it's not pertinent to this book review. His former accolades from 40 years ago have nothing to do with this book review. Just because you used to be awesome doesn't mean this book is awesome. It's kind of like saying my Honda Civic is awesome because I used to drive a BMW. But with that aside, I've had compositions sent to the dean before. I think this is pretty common in academia. Besides, we're getting distracted. This isn't pertinent to Hell's Shadows review. In taking the required test for university admissions, I scored in the top 1% of the verbal section of the SAT, and upon graduation with degrees in chemistry, biology, marketing, began writing complex technical marketing reports for CEOs of Fortune 500 firms as well as senior managers of European and Japanese companies while employed by specialty chemicals and advanced materials manufacturers, as well as later on Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park, California. Have been invited by Mensa to take its full test, having scored significantly well on its preliminary test. So his brag here is that he almost got into Mensa. I mean, I know a few people who are in Mensa, and they're not assholes. This guy almost got into, God help us if he actually got into Mensa. Barely be able to deal with him now. Indeed, my vocabulary has been tested to exceed 6,000 words, not including words in scientific and medical domains. Okay. What does this have to do with the fact that Hell's Shadows sucks? My books feature high to very high concept storylines that several professional reviewers of horror have stated they've never seen before. Having worked in the horror industry and the speculative industry, I highly doubt that he has anything that I have never seen before. Nothing new under the sun and everything. Below are comments for the works left by those that work for professional review sites. Well, that was a clusterfuck of a sentence. But yeah, here's he posting a bunch of reviews that he got, and that apparently awesome. Hell's Shadows of Page Turner. Think about the Emmy Moore horror. This is just a bunch of masturbatory BS. Reader's Favorite is owned by, operated by authors for authors. Yeah, we know who Reader's Favorite is, dude. Without a doubt, this is the most terrifying story. Okay, Horror Palace said, book has all the characteristics of a talented writer with many creative ideas. Onward and outward. Okay, here's the real thing that I find one of the most heinous things I find in this. Let's go into this. A review that arrived several years ago for another book of mine was assigned 4 stars by the book review site. Though good, and stop you there, a 4-star review is very good. It's not just sort of good, it's very good. I personally trust 4 stars reviews more than 5-star reviews. A lot of times we see, especially self-published indie authors, you see there's Amazon Goodreads account. It's covered in 5-star reviews. Because everyone's friends and their mama gives them a 5-star review. Not saying that your mama isn't smart and that I can't trust your mama, but your mama loves you. Those 4-star reviews are from people who aren't your mama. People who don't love you and don't have to give you a 4-star review. And those are people who are saying, this was a good story, and I honestly liked it. So, just stop you right there. 4 stars is good. More than good. But I'm gonna guess that he's not too happy with it. Continue on. Though good, I was unhappy with the rating. Because it seemed to me, having read the comments left by the reviewer, the individual's writing skill was sophomoric, reminiscent of high school, not intelligent writing, and worst of all, was simply unable to Appreciate the high concept storyline, its layered character, its sheer sophistication, flashes forward and back in time, all of this compounded by the book's numerous characters. Okay, let's stop there and unpack that. What he's saying is that the reviewer was not intelligent enough to understand his book. He is so special and so unique that the reviewer could not understand his book. And because they gave him this heinous 4-star review, they have to be sophomoric and unintelligent. I don't want to be mean, but I've been reading this email. He doesn't have much room to call other people's writing reminiscent of high school, because this is edgelord right up in here. Seriously. But even so, you see what he's suggesting here. He's suggesting that I have bullied people before, and I'm intending to bully you. Maya Angelou said, believe people when they tell you who you are the first time. He's telling you who he is. He is someone who will bully reviewers into getting what he wants from them, a 5-star review. He will bully you. He will harass you. He will insult your intelligence. He will try to make you feel low, talk about how more intelligent he is than you, how he knows more important people than you. And he'll carry on like that until you give him what he wants. And he's done it in the past, and he's going to do it to you. So there is no reason for Scifi to tolerate this person a second past this. He's saying, I will harass your reviewers. I've done it in the past. I will do it again. In other words, the reviewer didn't get it. The story was over the reviewer's head. Yes, it happened. Earlier this year, I contacted the review site again and spoke with a senior person, telling him what I just told you. He listened, understood what I had to say, but offered no comment. You know what he's saying here? He's dictating how he expects you to react. This other person that I manipulated and bullied in the past reacted this way. That same level of suffocancy that I got from them, that same level of kowtowing I got from them, I expect from you. He's setting up expectations for your surrender to his will. That's a huge red flag. This is not even all that covert. I think that this is kind of a pseudo-intellectual guy who thinks he's being super covert, but it's really overt what he's trying to say, which is, do what I want. This other person gave in the past, and I expect the same thing from you. I'm used to a certain level of treatment. Really what he's saying, he's used to a certain level of treatment by people, a certain level of surrender, a certain level of, he's used to sycophants, almost. People are just going to bend to his will for him. Because he made a big enough stink, you're going to do what he wants. This is the quintessential, I went over the reviewer's head to speak to the manager. That's that guy. That's Karen with the hair guy. Continuing. He listened, understood what I had to say, but offered no comment. I requested 3 additional reviews for the work and got them. The 3rd review came in the week before last. I called to tell the person with whom I spoke how the book was received. 3 5-star reviews. He was amazed how well I did, and then understood my comments per the first reviewer were correct. Accordingly, he inserted the 3 reviews on the website, moving the original 4-star review for my novel to the bottom where it belonged. Here in a snippet of one of the 5-star, I really don't care about the review that he actually got, because whatever. Well, basically, he went to the manager, he complained to the manager to get what he wanted, and he got what he wanted. A lot of times when you are dealing with a personality like this, you give them what they want because it costs you less than having to labor their personality any longer. And I'm on page 4 or 5 of this email so far, and it is a labor. It is a word salad. It is meant to just hammer and barrage you into submission. I've dealt with this type of person before. They literally just cause so much confusion and so much subterfuge and so much chaos. It's an utter word salad. The point you're like, yeah, whatever the hell you want, just go away. This is the annoying gnat technique to getting what you want, honestly. It's not elegant. It is not professional. And we're going to see that this doesn't really go far in the speculative community or in publishing to getting anywhere. Continuing, he did receive this snippet of this 5-star review, which included another review stated she liked the story a lot better than J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books. The type of comments you just read are the norm for me regardless of what I write. My ability to conceive and prepare prose are off the chart high. To the highest. I have off the chart high. High comments. Whatever. In fact, they're so good that you should know one of my books prompted the executive vice president of 20th Century Fox to call me at my house. Thing is, I don't know if he's lying. He's probably lying. And if he isn't lying, okay, this is publishing. Options are common in the publishing industry. We all work in the publishing industry. We all know how common optioning is. He's probably lying. But anyways, all of this information is not pertinent to whether or not Hell's Shadows sucks. What does 20th Century Fox have to do with not Hell's Shadows sucks? It is absolutely the case that only best-selling authors or their agents are contacted by Hollywood. No, it's not. By the way, Hollywood isn't like this deity, its own entity that just exists on a mountain and does stuff. There are millions of people who live in Hollywood. There are millions of grifters, millions of agents. I mean, this isn't just like Hollywood. Wow. I know plenty of people who've been contacted by Hollywood executives. A lot of them are shady. A lot of them are grifters. Some of them aren't. Things get optioned. Things get kept on option for years at a time just so studios can hold on to properties and then never made. I mean, this is common practice within this industry. It happens regularly. He is talking to other industry professionals and trying to wow them. It is absolutely the case that only best-selling authors or their agents are contacted by Hollywood, yet this executive had his secretary contact me directly, a very unknown author, to arrange an appointment in order that the EVP and I could speak. When the day and time arrived, Simon, one of the highest-ranked men in Hollywood, working for one of the largest motion picture studios in Hollywood. Again, this is an appeal to an authority, appeal to someone that is perceived to be more prestigious and more important to you, and these people associate with him. And they're more important than you, thus he is more important than you. See what a big deal he is, and what not a big deal you are? It's almost like you, little review site, should be thankful that he gives you any attention, that he doles out any crumbs to you. Right? That's what he's saying. Raved about the story, deeming it movie worthy. What an endorsement of my book. Of a book. Imagine it must be like getting a phone call from the Queen. His one concern about the book, however, had nothing to do with story quality but size of the story. The tale is expansive in the extreme. It would cost no less, he said, than $150 million, and as much as $200 million to convert to film. Okay, we are aware what optionings are. This is not how optioning works. And those are pretty... If this is the largest, most prestigious motion picture studio in Hollywood, that's not that big of a deal to drop $150 million on a story. It really isn't. Plus, is he talking about Hell's Shadow, which is a haunted house film, which a haunted house film costs nowhere near $150 million. But I digress, because this is all besides the point, because this is all just probably a lie, and B, not pertinent to Scifi And Scary.com's review of his self-published horror book. For the audience for which the novel is intended, it could take years before any studio would invest that much money in producing such a movie. Again, this is just such utter bullshit. At this point, all I can do is to invite you to read the book that you may judge for yourself. Again, he's inviting you. He's offering you a privilege to read his book and decide for yourself. Now that you see what an important, great person he is, he offers you forgiveness. Forgiveness for your misstep in not immediately seeing his brilliance. Right? At this point, all I can do is to invite you to read the book that you may judge for yourself, otherwise throw it out. Again, please don't trouble yourself to forward comments per the work to me. That they were never offering to forward comments per the work to him. They were just giving a heads up that they were posting the review and it wasn't good. Because authors don't read reviews. I mean, the reviews aren't for the authors, they're for the readers. Again, they're not going to change the book in any fashion. They didn't think it was. I know a good book when I read one. Do you? And I know a good book when I write one. I can confidently tell you the story's characters appear alive to the reader. There are numerous twists and turns. The tale, utterly unpredictable. The storyline, captivating. Scary as hell in places with special effects built in that have never been written of or seen on the silver screen. Was this a book he wrote or a screenplay? It's a book. Whatever. Totally original effects in a genre in which thousands of effects have been described by thousands of authors. In fact, certain supernatural occurrences in Hell's Shadow... Wait, did the name of the book change? Or am I just... I don't know. In fact, certain supernatural occurrences in Hell's Shadows could challenge a Hollywood special effects team to commit to film. Really? I know some effects guys, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say, probably not. They're probably more competent than you think of. This is the level of just kind of narcissism here, where every facet, everything he touches is somehow supersized, is somehow more awesome and more bombastic and more incredible and more enlightened than anyone has ever seen, and no one can handle him. Him or what he writes. No one can handle it. It's so great. He fundamentally keeps putting down the competency of everyone around him that he is asking for the help of. This is a review site. They help writers get reviews to readers to help them sell books. He's fundamentally insulting the intelligence and competency of people that in this industry he depends on to survive. With its target audience being women, this guy's target is women. The way he talks, I wouldn't doubt this wasn't the first time his target was women. There are a number of touches embodied in the story women have noted and enjoyed, helping them bond to the tale's major protagonist. Yes, a woman, of course. Wow, you made a woman a protagonist? That has never happened before. Whoa. No woman has ever been a protagonist of a horror film. No woman has ever been a protagonist of a horror book. And there are 4 in all, 2 more than the major male characters. There's a lot of vaginas in this book. That's why the dames like it. Because he knows women. And did I mention the ending? A shot to the head. Really, really shocking. Out of the blue. One 79-year-old reader, someone that read this 450-page book. Oh, stop the frickin' gun. This is a horror novel that is at 450 pages. I mean, not saying a horror novel can't be 450 pages. But I've worked in horror, speculative fiction, long enough to know that you have to be an extremely good writer to extend a horror plotline, a thriller plotline, to what essentially comes to half of a Brandon Sanderson novel. Whatever. One 79-year-old reader, someone that read this 450-page book in one day, demanded I write a sequel. She was so mad, I thought she was going to hit me. Told me... Okay, I sincerely doubt that that's why she wanted to hit you. Told me that she was an Alfred... Told me that was an Alfred Hitchcock ending? She's old enough to remember Alfred. I've watched every one of Alfred Hitchcock's movies dozens of times. That's an insult. He is a master in the genre of suspense. If you're a horror or thriller writer and you don't know Alfred Hitchcock, there's... In short, because this has been so short, this is page 9. In short, Hell's Shadows is flawless, an elegant tale yet simple to read, well executed and immensely entertaining. It is a hugely enjoyable tale of horror, different in content than all others, even in such a crowded space, a novel upon which numerous readers have helped heaped generous amounts of praise. The book features just described... Oh god, the book features just described should be in Science Review. Apparently they're not. Thank you for your time and assistance. Okay, best to you, Dean. At the end, he's basically dictating what you should do. He's dictating your job to you. And he's telling you you're an incompetent fool if you don't see his inherent genius. This is not the ranting of a man who believes he is genius. Let's get that out there really clear. When you're dealing with this type of personality, you're dealing with someone who is very fearful that you're exposing them, that you are speaking truth, that you are shouting, "The Emperor has no clothes." They are afraid that their worst fears about themselves will come to light. Someone who rants like this is not someone who thinks that they're amazing and a genius, and he might have a touch of delusion, but this is someone who's very fragile. This is a skinless person who, like the sunburn analogy, does not want the cloth to come off and to be exposed to things. There's a reason why we don't like this type of person. And inherently is because, not because they're thin-skinned necessarily, but they can't take criticism. They can't put themselves out there. They can't allow themselves to be vulnerable, allow themselves to be wrong, allow themselves to fail. People who are incapable of becoming vulnerable are incapable of bravery. And there's few things that we hate more in another human being than cowardice. And this is what we're dealing with. But moving on, people at Sci-Fi and Scary were obviously a little taken aback that they received this letter. They do have a policy that I'm going to post up that says that if you're an author behaving badly, they will post your correspondence publicly to let, frankly, it's a service to other writers, other reviewers, other editors, and even convention organizers not to deal with this author. This is a very small industry. Everyone talks to each other. And they certainly did not deserve that abuse. They did not deserve someone trying to manipulate them into getting what they wanted, especially for such small fries, you know? Like, it's just a review on a site. This is a small grift to be grifting for here. I digress. Apparently, according to Scifi And Scary.com, Mr. Klein also added a note stating, and please note this, both novels were read by an entire Barnes & Noble store management team and were deemed so good by 2 assistant store managers and the store manager that they were ordered and shelved right next to the works of Mr. King himself. You've already probably intellectualized the obvious. The name Klein, K-L, comes after the name King, K-I. Because Barnes & Noble, crazy as it sounds, tends to shelve things in alphabetical order by author's last name within the same genre. King is a horror writer. Mr. Klein is a horror writer. Klein comes after King. I have a friend whose last name is Miller. And she got a little chuckle when her book got shelved right after George R.R. Martin. This wasn't a statement that, oh, I'm as famous and as great and as wonderful as George R.R. Martin. Everyone likes me as much as George R.R. Martin. No, it's simply the convention. I mean, my last name is S.C. I will be shelved after Sanderson. Am I as prolific of a writer as Brandon Sanderson? No. This is obviously not Mr. Klein's first tantrum publicly. I mean, he already alluded to when he went to the manager at that other review site and basically bullied them into giving him what he wanted. Sharing some screenshots of replies that he had in response to Amazon reviewers that didn't give him a perfect review. Reviewer stated back in October of 2017, I labored through this and felt as though life had returned upon finishing. It's a pretty harsh review, I admit. But you know what? You're not supposed to read the reviews. It's just one sentence. Carry on with your life. But he didn't. He replied, you labored through it? Really? Why would anyone, an unverified purchaser no less, claim to have read a near 600-page book? And he just answered the question to why he labored through it right there. It's a horror novel that's 600 pages. That was so bad the reader gave it 1 star. Who on earth would suffer through so many pages of non-required reading if the novel were that painful? I tell you, no one, including you. Thanks for smearing my book that you took a great deal of time and thought to construct. A book that may well become a motion picture. So this isn't his first. It's not his first tantrum. This is what this guy does. This is bad authorial behavior. I think that goes beyond this claim statement right now. With that said, since Scifi and Scary have made this correspondent public, there has been an attack on, I've seen an attack on his Amazon page of people just letting him have it in the review section. This is not a defense of Mr. Klein, but I would say my personal belief is that if you didn't actually read and buy a book, did not purchase a product on Amazon specifically, I would say you probably shouldn't leave a review. Goodreads, I think you have more leeway because it's more of a community-based place and where the writer and reader community gathers. But Amazon is purely a product-based central. me personally, I wouldn't leave a bad review for someone on Amazon for something I have not read, just because they're a heinous bag of dicks. With that said, if you disagree with that, you have reasoning, I'm more than open to hearing your argument for going after someone's Amazon page. You can leave that down in the comments. I'm more than open to hear another point of view on that. But currently now, I think that that's not something that I would ever partake in. With that said, he's taken the book off of Amazon. He's taken all of his books off of Amazon. He has basically fled. The only thing you can find on Amazon right now is people like selling their own personal copies of his book on private marketplace on Amazon for outrageous prices. You can see they're selling it for like $41 for a paperback of a CreateSpace self-published book. So yeah, he's gone into hiding. And a lot of people, if you've dealt with these type of personalities before, that's the nicest way I can put that, you are probably used to this concept called desertion of territory, to where when the person rages out, they have a narcissistic tantrum, and they go to bully to get what they want. If they get a clashback, a true clashback, they'll tend to desert territory. It's kind of like going back in your cave and licking your wounds. Because if they can't be in control, then they'll just not be there at all. They can decide, well, y'all are losers, I'm going home. It's that Cartman, I'm going home thing. And that's essentially what he's doing. He's hiding. He's shut down everything. He's erasing his presence on Amazon. He hasn't done that on Goodreads, because Goodreads, it being a community-based site, it's really hard to get a book taken off of Goodreads. Amazon, because it's a market-based, product-based site, it's a lot easy. You can just take your product down, because you are, as the independent self-published author, are the seller. Goodreads is more like a catalog, like a library, and they tend to keep a good record. Their point is to keep records of books and authors, and the community, if it's been interacted with the community, it's not likely to get it taken down. So there's a really good footprint of how people feel about him right now on Goodreads. A lot of statements of lack of self-awareness, arrogant, oh, Mr. Klein, you are arrogant, self-aggrandizing, tu m'espasac. I thought I was going to get a thrilling supernatural horror story. Instead, all I got was a book saying how flawless it was in establishing strong characters that women would like, and bragged about its 60,000 word vocabulary. Update, Mr. Klein has not learned anything. He finally responded back to Lynn. Again, I apologize if I'm not quite pronouncing that name correctly. Tell it's a pretty name. That's all I can tell sometimes. He did reply back, and he said, "The email I sent you was private, addressed to you and no other. Yet you put it on the net and, as a result, have badly damaged my book." Let's stop there, sweetheart. You're still worried about your book? This has badly damaged you in your career. Forget the book. This almost, I guess this feeds into this guy's mindset a little bit. He's still thinking about the proxy accomplishment. And you'll see this with a lot of people sometimes. The accomplishment becomes this godhead, or this almost like a golem that they can impress their own ego upon. And they can have a level of separation. Therefore, the book has gotten criticized, and they can separate it, like, oh, you maligned the book, but not me, because the book is a separate entity. Before, it represented and was a godhead of all that was great about him. Now that's been maligned, it is a separate entity that you're attacking from him. When the reality situation, and I don't think he's stupid, is to realize that this isn't your book that's been damaged. This is your reputation in an industry. No one's going to work with you after this. The people at Sci-Fi and Scary are highly respected in this industry. No one's going to work with you. Your book is not damaged. You are the damaged product. Thank you for that. A little condescending there. I had no idea communications between an author and you were meant to go public. Just remember, I did not reply to Sam's review because I simply declined to see it, something that is not the same as having read it and addressed it directly. I don't really get what that really has to do with anything. And again, it does clearly state in their policy that if you act like a bag of dicks, they're going to show it to everyone. They stated quite clearly this is the first time they've ever had to enact that policy. But boy did they. Again, I say that he really didn't learn from anything because he didn't go back into a well of self-reflection and say, oh, you're right, I apologize, I was out of line, I got emotional, my anxiety got the better of me, whatever excuse he would have. He came back and said, you're the problem. You maligned my book. You did this. Look what you did. And this is where we have our trigger warning again. If you recognize this type of pattern, you recognize what is being said and implied here. I don't know if I have to go too far into that. If you don't, then the guy's just an asshole. I mean, I am an asshole. I know an asshole when I see it. This is a little bit beyond asshole. This is a bully. This is bullying behavior. This is a you made me behave that way reaction. This is look what you made me do reaction. Look what you did to me reaction. There's no sense of personal responsibility for his actions. There's no sense of personal responsibility for the things that came out of his mouth or out of his keyboard into the email. And this is a guy who's been working in the industry for 40 years, he claims, so this is pretty much an older dude, and he still has not learned this to this day. And that's kind of pitiable in the end. Well, Sci-Fi and Scary did comment back. Dean, it is in our review policy that if you behave in a manner not befitting an adult, your communications will be made public. You are supposed to read the review policy before submitting your book to the site. Again, this is not a pay-for review site. This was not a product he was purchasing. They had invested their time in his book to put a review up. He was absolutely responsible to read the review policy. You even have a checkbox you are required to check saying you have read and agreed to the review policy. It is not I who damaged your book. That is all on you. Best. Also, more as a warning, don't do this. You're a young writer. You're just starting in the industry. Don't do this. If you get a bad review, let it die. Write something else, or send your book off to someone else to be reviewed by someone else. This is a good example of just how not to act. But anyways, thank you for coming with me and on this long, labored read through this. Hope it was entertaining. Again, I'm M.M. Schill. I'm a writer, illustrator, and editor. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos later. Comment below. Share this if you think anyone would get a laugh off of this guy's ranting nonsense. And I'll see you later. Thanks.